Good morning and welcome to Sunday morning. Today is December 6th, and that means it is the sixth day of our reading of the Gospel. Oh boy. Sometimes I really dislike when Facebook changes things and they have pop ups going on in front of me. Oh well. Anyway, I'm Brian. I'm the pastor here at Christ United Methodist Church in Waynesboro, and yes, I am coming to you live from the church this morning from my office. You can see my books and my collectibles and stuff like that. Some of my Star Wars stuff behind me. But thank you for joining me this morning. Um, for as we go through Luke. And like I said, since today is December 6th, that means we're on chapter 6 of the Gospel of Luke. And excuse me, not a whole lot to. As far as context, if you've been watching the past few videos, you kind of understand things, and there's not a whole lot to talk about today, at least not right now. I'm sure I'll pause as we go along. Try not to make this too long because chapter 6 is a fairly long chapter. But anyway, we're going to jump right in here. One Sabbath, as Jesus was going through the wheat fields, his disciples were picking the heads of wheat, rubbing them in their hands, and eating them. Some Pharisees said, "Why are you breaking the Sabbath law?" Okay, pause. um, if you were watching the sermon, the worship experience from a few weeks ago when I talked about Sabbath, we talked about this a little bit. That the Pharisees are looking very literally, and they're turning the Sabbath into something that we keep rather than something that keeps us. They think of it as a law rather than a command, rather than as a gift. Jesus' disciples are actually working in a couple different ways. First, they're plucking the grain, which normally it would be okay to pluck somebody else's grain as long as you didn't use a sickle on it, as long as you're just using your hands. It's kind of like gleaning. And then they're also working by rubbing it together to separate the wheat from the chaff, so that they could then eat it. And again, the Pharisees, being real strict in their understanding, are saying, "Hey, you're not supposed to be doing that. You're working." Excuse me. Jesus replied, "Haven't you read what David and his companions did when they were hungry? He broke the law by going into God's house and eating the bread of the presence, which only the priests can eat. He also gave some of the bread to his companions." Then Jesus said to them, "The human one is Lord of the Sabbath." Pause. So the bread of the presence is special bread, like it said there by Luke. Only the priest could eat it. There were supposed to be 12 loaves of bread set up on a special table in the sanctuary of the temple, and only the priests were supposed to be able to eat it. Not only in the temple, but also preceding that in the tabernacle. So only the priests were supposed to eat it. And David not into the temple, but into one of the tabernacles, and was eating the bread of the presence, and along with his disciples. Now, Luke says that Jesus said that he is the Lord of the Sabbath. The human one is Lord of the Sabbath. Mark puts it a little bit differently, and I used Mark's translation, Mark's version, a few weeks ago, when he said um, the Sabbath was made for humans, not humans for the Sabbath, meaning it's not something we keep, it's something that keeps us. Anyway, continuing. On another Sabbath, pause, Jesus does a lot of things on Sabbath days not supposed to. Like I said, paraphrasing John Lewis, Jesus got into a lot of good trouble. On another Sabbath, Jesus entered a synagogue to teach. A man was there whose right hand was withered. The legal experts and the Pharisees were watching him closely to see if he would heal on the Sabbath. They were looking for a reason to bring charges against him. Jesus knew their thoughts. So he said to the man with the withered hand, "Get up and stand in front of everyone." He got up and stood there. Jesus said to the legal experts and Pharisees, "Here's a question for you. Is it legal on the Sabbath to do good or to do evil? To save life or to destroy it?" Looking around at them all, he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." So he did, and his hand was made healthy. They were furious and began talking with each other about what to do to Jesus. Hmm. Pause. Pause. So Jesus is saying, is it right to do good or evil on the Sabbath? Is it okay to do good or is it okay to do evil? Because Jesus is setting them up, of course. Rhetorical question, we might say. Doing nothing for Jesus to help this man to heal him would be the equivalent of doing evil. To do something for him, to heal him, would be to do something good. And therefore, Jesus said, no problem with doing that on the Sabbath, in spite of what you say about the law. And he does say, is it right to give life or to destroy it? And again, Jesus is making this parallelism, uh, this equation that doing nothing would be basically destroying life, whereas healing would give this man new life and better life. Therefore, it's okay, even under their strictest sense of the law. Elsewhere, Jesus talks about, isn't it okay to take care of your animals on Sunday? I mean, excuse me, on Sabbath, which would have been Friday night, sundown on Friday night until sunset on Saturday. Okay, back to the story, verse 12. During that time, Jesus went out to the mountain to pray, and he prayed to God all night long. At daybreak, he called together his disciples. Pause, because there were a lot of them, not just the 12. That's what he's getting to now. He had a whole bunch of people following him. At daybreak, he called together his disciples. He chose 12 of them, whom he called apostles, meaning witnesses. Simon, whom he named Peter, his brother Andrew, James, John, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James the son of Alphaeus, Simon, who was called a zealot, Judas the son of James, and Judas Iscariot, who became a traitor. Pause. If you compare the listing of the 12 disciples in the various Gospels, um, each one of them has it a little bit different. Each one of them has a little bit different. Mostly in the order. They all do. They all break them down into groups of four, but they as they read them, Peter, Andrew, James, and John. Then moves on to the next four. Then moves on to the next four. But the order is a little bit different and stuff like that. One thing I would point out too, what happened to Levi, right? Just a couple chapters ago, we have Jesus calling Levi, who was a tax collector. He's not in this list of 12. However, Matthew is. So some Bible scholars say that Matthew and Levi are the same because the Gospel of Matthew says that Matthew was a tax collector. The other Gospels don't say that about Matthew, but Luke says that this guy Levi was a tax collector. So Bible scholars said, well, Levi, Matthew, same person? Well, maybe. Maybe just a different name for the same person. That's kind of what Jesus did with Simon slash Peter. So that could be the case, or it could be um, just a difference in it. Just Levi could be just another person, not one of the 12, but one of the extra disciples. But they do all say in some way, shape, or form that Judas was Judas Iscariot, the betrayer, the one who betrayed Jesus, a traitor, something like that. Continuing, Jesus came down from the mountain with them and stood on a large area of level ground. A great crowd of his disciples and a huge crowd of people from all around Judea and Jerusalem and the area around Tyre and Sidon joined him there. They came to hear him and to be healed from their diseases, and those bothered by unclean spirits were healed. The whole crowd wanted to touch him because power was going out from him and he was healing everyone. We're going to pause there because next it goes into a very, very lengthy part of Jesus' teaching. This is Jesus' teaching. The Gospel of Matthew, Matthew chapters 5 through 7, are what we refer to as the Sermon on the Mount. Luke changes the setting. Rather than it being on the mount, it is on a plain. So it's this level area. Um, and the order of the stuff, the slight variation in what he has Jesus saying, well, those differences are important, and they're for a reason. We're not going to get into all of it because I'm giving away all my good sermon material. Um, but read through them, compare the next few chapters of Luke to those 3 chapters of Matthew, and you'll see some of the same teachings, perhaps with slightly different emphases. Back to the story, verse 20. Jesus raised his eyes to the disciples and said, "Happy are you who are poor, because God's kingdom is yours. Happy are you who hunger now, because you will be satisfied. Happy are you who weep now, because you will laugh. Happy are you when people hate you, reject you, insult you, and condemn your name as evil because of the human one. Rejoice when that happens. Leap for joy because you have a great reward in heaven. Their ancestors did the same things to the prophets. But how terrible for you who are rich, because you have already received your comfort. How terrible for you who have plenty now, because you will be hungry. How terrible for you who laugh now, because you will mourn and weep. How terrible for you when all speak well of you. Their ancestors did the same things to the false prophets. Pause. You might recognize that, at least vaguely so, as that is the equivalent of the Beatitudes from chapter 5 of Matthew. How to be God's children. More teaching from Jesus, mostly for his disciples, although other people were there, like it said. This is for people who really wanted to follow Jesus, maybe not just his 12, but the expanded group of disciples. Luke specifically says disciples. So this is instructions on how to live like a Christ follower. But I say to you who are willing to hear, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. If someone slaps you on the cheek, offer the other one as well. If someone takes your coat, don't withhold your shirt either. Give to everyone who asks, and don't demand your things back from those who take them. Treat people in the same way that you want to be treat same way you want them to treat you. If you love those who love you, why should you be commended? Even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, why should you be commended? Even sinners do that. Pause. Just a clarification, when it says sinners here, the context there is usually thought of as being Gentiles or non believers. Okay? The difference between a believer and a non believer. These are things that even non believers do. If you lend to those from if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, why should you be commended? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be paid back in full. Instead, love your enemies. Do good and lend expecting nothing in return. If you do, you will have a great reward. You will be acting the way children of the Most High act, for he is kind to ungrateful and wicked people. Be compassionate, just as your Father is compassionate. Don't judge, and you won't be judged. Don't condemn, and you won't be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good portion packed down, firmly shaken, and overflowing will fall into your lap. The portion you give will determine the portion you receive in return. Pause. What you get in return, what comes overflowing to you, the blessings of God aren't necessarily monetary. Okay? Let's not get tied up in the prosperity gospel that says when you give money, you get more money back. That's not how it works, and that's not exactly what Luke was saying here. Continuing. Pardon me. Jesus also told them a riddle. A blind person can't lead another blind person, right? Won't they both fall into a ditch? I think so. Disciples aren't greater than their teacher, but whoever is fully prepared will be like their teacher. Why do you see the splinter in your brother's or sister's eye, but don't notice the log in your own eye? How can you say to your brother or sister, "Brother, sister, let me take the splinter out of your eye," when you don't see the log in your own eye? You deceive yourselves. First, take the log out of your eye, and then you will see clearly to take the splinter out of your brother's or sister's eye. A good tree doesn't produce bad fruit, nor does a bad tree produce good fruit. Each tree is known by its own fruit. People don't gather figs from thorny plants, nor do they pick grapes from prickly bushes. A good person produces good from the good treasury of the inner self, while an evil person produces evil from the evil treasury of the inner self. The inner self overflows with words that are spoken. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and don't do what I say? Oh, I'll show what it's like when someone comes to me, hears my words, and puts them into practice. It's like a person building a house by digging deep and laying the foundation on bedrock. When the flood came, the rising water smashed against the house, but the water couldn't shake the house because it was well built. But those who don't put into practice what they hear are like a person who built a house without a foundation. The floodwater smashed against it and it collapsed instantly. It was completely destroyed. Ooh, that ends chapter 6. So tomorrow, of course, is December 7th, and we will be doing chapter 7 of Luke tomorrow. Here's the thing: it won't be at 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock, I'm scheduled to be ringing the bell for Salvation Army with our church, and yes, there are a couple of vacancies, a couple of openings. If you wanted to participate in that, let me know. I'll put you in touch with Cindy Hartman. She's putting that together, and I'll be making this announcement later when we do the full worship service. Um, but we have a couple openings because a couple people that I'm not sure if they came down with COVID or they came close contact, somebody that they are close contact with tested positive for COVID, so they will be unable to participate tomorrow. So there are a couple openings. Anyway, I'm going to be there at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, so I can't be here and on that at the same time. You know what I mean? Um, so I'm going to do one of three things. One, it's going to be on live tomorrow at 8. Two, it's going to be on live tomorrow at 10:30 ish. Or three, I'm going to pre-record it sometime today and have it scheduled to go to be posted tomorrow at 9. So I'm not 100% sure which one it's going to be. Kind of depends on how today goes and how tomorrow morning goes for me. I appreciate your understanding on that. One way or another, you will have me here tomorrow with chapter 7 of the Gospel of Luke. Uh, Please join us in an hour and a half ish at 10:45 for our worship experience today. It is here online only, online only. So thank you for joining me. Have a wonderful day.